Hey guys, tonight we slip into a December night so still you can almost hear the trees breathe. The snow settles in the hollows of the Ardennes forest like flour on a baker's board, soft and innocent, and you'd swear war has packed up for the winter. But then, far off, you catch a faint rumble, too heavy for thunder, too steady for a train. You're standing on what seems like a quiet front, a ghost sector, the kind generals write off as peaceful. You probably won't survive this kind of peace for long. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere chilly or somewhere that never gets snow, drop your location and local time below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're with a young American private from the 99th Infantry Division, a new unit fresh from the States. He's been told this stretch of front is quiet. The Germans opposite are supposed to be exhausted, broken, finished. But tonight, as you rub your hands for warmth and watch your breath fog, there's an odd hush that feels too deliberate, like the forest is holding its breath. Somewhere beyond those dark pines, something's alive. The Ardennes in December 1944 looks like a postcard. Pines heavy with snow, villages tucked between frozen hills, smoke curling lazily from stone chimneys. But the beauty hides menace. Deep in those woods, tens of thousands of German soldiers, panzer grenadiers, paratroopers, tank crews are assembling in secrecy. Their engines stay cold until the last possible minute. Trucks have been rolled downhill without lights, so Allied aircraft won't spot them. Officers whisper code names. Wacht am Rhein, watch on the Rhine. It's Hitler's final throw of the dice. After Normandy and the long retreat across France, his generals say the war is lost. The Allies are at the Rhine River. The Red Army presses in from the east. But Hitler, pacing in his mountain headquarters, sees one last chance. If he can smash through the thin American lines here, reach the Meuse River and seize Antwerp, he can split the British and American armies apart. Maybe the Allies will panic, argue, and sue for peace. It's delusion, but a delusion wrapped in precision. Across the line, the Americans have their own illusions. Reports of German buildups filter in. Patrols spot fresh tire tracks. Radio intercepts catch unusual chatter. But headquarters dismisses them. The weather's foul. Reconnaissance planes stay grounded. And the biggest blind spot is arrogance. Everyone believes the Germans simply don't have the strength left for a major offensive. They'll defend, not attack, says the staff in their warm chateaus. You huddle in a foxhole, rifle balanced across your knees. Somewhere behind you, a buddy boils coffee so black it could strip paint. A jeep backfires down the road and makes everyone jump. The men joke to cut the tension. What's the worst that can happen? Snowball fight with Jerry? Another cracks. Sure, until he throws a panzer. You laugh, but it's a thin sound. Far to the east, in the German staging areas, commanders like Sepp Dietrich and Hasso von Manteuffel finalize their orders. They're uneasy. The terrain is awful for tanks, the fuel supply dangerously tight, and Allied air superiority means any daylight movement could be suicidal, if the weather clears. But for now, the sky is sealed with low, merciful clouds. A gift from God, one staff officer murmurs. At 5:30 a.m. on December 16th, the stillness shatters. The horizon flashes white. 1,000 guns open at once, their reports echoing between the ridges. Trees splinter, snow geysers into the air. The ground trembles under you as shells crash down in a rolling curtain. Radios squawk nonsense, wires are cut, operators shouting for contact. Somewhere up the line, a man screams, "They're coming!" Through the smoke, shapes emerge. Dark coats, white camouflage smocks, steel helmets dusted with frost. German infantry surge forward yelling, "Los! Los!" Tank engines growl behind them, panthers and king tigers grinding over the frozen roads. The startled Americans fight back, but the line buckles, Whole platoons vanish under the weight of fire. Down the road, traffic jams form. Jeeps, half-tracks, ambulances tangled in panic. You see officers waving pistols, MPs trying to direct chaos. The forest roads, narrow and icy, become choke points. Somewhere, a medic kneels over a wounded man whose breath freezes in the air before fading entirely. One mainstream historical fact. By midday on December 16th, 3 German armies, more than 200,000 men, were driving westward in one of the largest surprise attacks of the war. The offensive's first shock achieved what the planners hoped: confusion, disbelief, and holes in the Allied front wide enough for tanks to pour through. Here's a quirky tidbit. Many of the American defenders in the opening hours fought wearing mismatched gear, some still in lightweight autumn uniforms, some with captured German gloves, and one unit famously using captured Belgian bicycles to ferry messages when radios failed. You retreat toward a nameless hamlet, stumbling through snow, the air thick with cordite. A chaplain runs past, clutching a box of bandages. A cook drags a wounded sergeant on a sled. You glance back once and see German paratroopers raising their helmets on sticks to bait your comrades into firing. Tricks straight from the First World War. Historians still argue whether the Allies' intelligence failure was inevitable or unforgivable. Some blame the weather. Others point to complacency. Signals of the coming storm, German reconnaissance flights, fuel stockpiles, road repairs, were visible but interpreted as defensive. It's the old lesson. You see what you expect to see until the snow turns red and proves you wrong. As the day bleeds into evening, the forest glows faintly with burning fuel dumps. You catch snatches of radio chatter. Bastogne under pressure, St. Vith holding, Elsenborn uncertain. The map, if you could see it from the sky, would show a dark bulge pushing westward, the shape that gives this battle its name. Back in your foxhole, you finally pause to breathe. The barrage has moved on, the silence returning as sudden as it left. You light a cigarette with trembling hands, shielding the glow. Someone mutters, "What the hell just happened?" Another answers, "The war's back." In the distance, the rumble of armor fades toward the Meuse. You don't know it yet, but you're standing at the edge of Hitler's last great gamble. A storm that will rage for 6 freezing weeks, cost nearly 200,000 casualties on both sides, and leave the Ardennes scarred long after the snow melts. You glance at the stars briefly visible through the thinning smoke. The night seems quiet again, but your ears still ring with phantom explosions. Sleep won't come easily tonight. Not for you, not for anyone in these woods. The next morning, the air tastes like metal and damp wood smoke. You wake to the sound of engines growling deep in the forest, an eerie chorus that swells and fades with the wind. Somewhere up the ridge, a German officer checks his watch and gives a single nod. You can almost feel the offensive tightening like a coiled spring. For Hitler, this is Der Wacht am Rhein, the watch on the Rhine. But to his generals, it's a desperate throw, more prayer than plan. The blueprint sprawls across maps in red pencil. 3 armies will surge through the Ardennes, sweep across the Meuse River, and capture Antwerp. By doing so, they'll cut the British and Americans apart, isolate supply lines, and force the Western Allies to negotiate. On paper, it reads like genius. In reality, it's madness dressed as optimism. You picture the Führer at his table, stabbing a finger toward Belgium on the map, insisting that his enemies are weak, disorganized, fat with victory. His generals, Model, Rundstedt, Manteuffel, exchange weary glances. They've seen this before, but they obey. They always obey. The Ardennes, chosen for secrecy, is both a sword and a snare. The forest is dense, the roads narrow and slick with ice, and visibility is terrible. Yet that's exactly why the Allies believe it's safe. Hitler wants to turn that complacency into catastrophe. His plan relies on 2 allies that don't wear uniforms: fog and surprise. You hear it in fragments, the way an officer growls, "Antwerpen or bust," the way a radio operator mutters about fuel trucks that never arrived. Some tanks have been camouflaged with snow and pine boughs. Others run engines in short bursts to save precious gasoline. A Tiger II tank gulps nearly 2 gallons per kilometer. It's like planning a marathon with a thimble of water. In your mind's eye, the offensive unfolds like a chessboard on fire. On the northern flank, the 6th SS Panzer Army, commanded by Sepp Dietrich, will spearhead toward Liège. In the center, General Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army drives for Bastogne and the Meuse. To the south, the 7th Army shields the flank against Patton's 3rd Army. The timetable is brutally tight. Reach the Meuse within 3 days, Antwerp by day 10. The weather must hold, the roads must stay passable, and the Allied Air Force must remain grounded. One missed condition, and the whole thing collapses like a house of snow. But for the first 24 hours, fortune smiles on them. The weather stays gray and low, perfect for concealment. American outposts are thin, some manned by clerks and cooks pressed into rifle duty. When the artillery barrage begins, the front lines buckle under pressure. German armor rolls forward, engines snarling, their tracks throwing frozen earth like waves. Inside those tanks, crews whisper hopes of ending the war before spring. One radio operator carries a loaf of bread baked by his wife, wrapped carefully in a towel. He swears he'll eat it in Antwerp. As the panzers move, German commandos, wearing captured American uniforms, infiltrate behind the lines. Their mission, Operation Greif, is as audacious as it is absurd. Sow confusion, change road signs, cut phone wires, misdirect convoys. Some of these disguised troops even manage to capture bridges and reroute traffic. A few are caught and executed as spies, but the psychological damage is done. American MPs start quizzing anyone in uniform with absurd tests. Who won the World Series? What's the capital of Illinois? Rumor spreads faster than the tanks. One quirky tidbit: a British officer driving a jeep was once detained by American sentries who demanded he prove his identity by naming the American vice president. He failed. Honestly, most Americans couldn't have answered either. It was Henry A. Wallace, in case you're wondering. Meanwhile, in Allied headquarters, disbelief reigns. Reports of attacks flood in from multiple sectors: Elsenborn, St. Vith, Clairvaux, but senior officers think it's a diversion. Only by evening do they realize the scale. Eisenhower gathers his staff at Versailles and mutters, "This is no counterattack. It's a full offensive." The map before him looks like it's bleeding westward. Back at the front, you march through ankle-deep snow, the sound of distant armor pulsing through the ground. The air smells of diesel and pine sap. The forest seems to listen. Every so often, a German flare bursts overhead, lighting up the trees in ghastly blue. For a heartbeat, you see the silhouettes of men, frozen mid-stride, before darkness swallows them again. The Ardennes roads are strangled with traffic. American columns retreating, German columns advancing, civilians trapped in between. A farmhouse burns beside a crossroads, and someone's goat wanders through the smoke, bleating indignantly, as if scolding both armies. You smile despite yourself. Even in hell, life insists on being ridiculous. Historians still argue whether Hitler's goal was ever truly achievable. Some say he sought a political miracle, a forced peace to buy time for new weapons like the jet fighter and V-2 rockets. Others claim he was delusional, chasing ghosts of 1940s glory when his panzers raced through France. What's certain is that his commanders knew better, but lacked the courage or the power to stop him. By nightfall on the 17th, the offensive is a living organism. Armored spearheads probing west, infantry mopping up bypassed towns, supply units scrambling through the woods. In the north, Kampfgruppe Piper, a column of SS armor, pushes ruthlessly ahead, ignoring orders to slow down for infantry support. His men capture fuel dumps, overrun convoys, and, tragically, leave a trail of atrocities that will stain the campaign forever. You shiver in your foxhole and whisper to yourself, "It can't last." You're right, but it won't end quickly. The weather holds, The Allies reel, and the roads that seemed so harmless yesterday now lead straight into history's bloodiest ambush. Somewhere near the village of Loshim, a lone Sherman tank crew listens to the approaching roar of enemy engines. The driver sighs and says, "Guess the quiet sector ain't so quiet anymore." The gunner chuckles dryly. At least it's not boring. Humor, the last sandbag against panic. From the German perspective, everything seems to click. Surprise achieved, enemy retreating, bridges intact. Field Marshal Model sends word to Berlin that the offensive is proceeding favorably. Yet even he knows the clock is ticking. Fuel shortages already force tanks to halt overnight. Columns stretch for miles, easy prey if the sky's clear. You trudge on through the snow, boots stiff, rifle cold against your palm. The forest glows faintly with firelight from burning trucks. Somewhere up ahead, a group of American engineers blow a bridge to stall the advance. The explosion rolls across the hills, echoing like a closing door. By the 18th of December, Hitler's gamble is in full motion, an avalanche set loose by his stubborn faith. The Germans push 50 miles into Allied territory, the deepest penetration since D-Day. Panic spreads among American rear units. MPs wave pistols to turn traffic, shouting, "Fall back to Bastogne!" The name will soon be legend, but already cracks form in the German advance. Supply columns lag, communication falters, and captured fuel runs out faster than expected. In the chaos, Allied soldiers start regrouping, isolated units forming islands of resistance. What began as a rout is slowly hardening into resolve. You lean against a frozen tree, catching your breath. Around you, the snow muffles everything. Gunfire, orders, even fear. For a moment, it feels like the forest itself is tired of war. Somewhere, a bird calls once and falls silent. Tomorrow will bring counterattacks, desperate stands, and more names for history to carve into stone. But tonight, the forest of the Ardennes belongs to shadows and engines, to men chasing an impossible victory, and others praying to survive until dawn. You glance at your watch. It's almost midnight. Somewhere behind those hills, Hitler believes the tide of war is turning. You, standing ankle-deep in snow with frozen socks and half a chocolate bar in your pocket, know better. The tide's not turning. It's just gathering strength before it crashes back. The third day dawns like a bad hangover, gray, sour, and heavy with dread. You wake stiff and cold in your foxhole, your blanket crusted with ice, your boots frozen nearly solid. The forest is quiet again, but it's not peace you hear. It's the stunned silence of an army trying to figure out what just hit it. For 2 days now, reports have poured in. Contradictory, fragmented, and unbelievable. Whole American regiments have disappeared in the fog. Towns once considered safe are now in German hands. Command posts have gone silent. You imagine some clerk at headquarters staring at a map full of pins that suddenly don't make sense anymore. Up the chain of command, disbelief is still stronger than fear. Allied intelligence insists the Germans can't possibly have enough fuel or manpower left for a large offensive. General Omar Bradley, usually calm, is said to have muttered, "Where the hell did they get all those tanks?" He's not alone in wondering. The fog is literal too. It clings low over the pines, swallowing sound and sight. You march down a road where visibility is barely 10 yards, and every shadow looks like a muzzle flash waiting to happen. The forest feels like it's closing in, thick with unseen movement. Somewhere, a lone dog barks once and goes silent. This is the Ardennes. Beautiful, cruel, deceptive. It's supposed to be impassable terrain for large forces. In fact, the Allies had once considered using it as their own invasion route back in 1940, until they remembered that's exactly how the Germans surprised France the first time. History, as it turns out, likes reruns. Your division commander finally receives orders to hold at all costs. That's a brave way of saying, we're not sure what's happening, so just don't run. Communications are spotty. Runners vanish in the woods, telephone wires are cut. You're told to expect reinforcements that never arrive. Every jeep you see heading west looks suspiciously overloaded. You trudge past a group of exhausted MPs waving flashlights, trying to keep order at a crossroads. One of them yells, "No retreat down this road! St. Vith only!" Someone else yells back, "St. Vith's already gone, genius!" Confusion becomes a form of background music. Inside the fog, small units fight their own isolated wars. A platoon might hold out for hours, thinking they're the last survivors on the front. In one such pocket, near the village of Lanzarote, 18 American soldiers of an intelligence unit hold off hundreds of advancing paratroopers for nearly an entire day. It's a story so improbable that even after the war, it reads like a myth. But it's true. Their delay will ripple through the German timetable, slowing everything just enough to matter. You crouch in a shallow trench with 2 other GIs, trading a tin of cold beans. One of them, a redhead from Kansas, mutters, "I thought the war was almost over." You laugh softly. Guess someone forgot to tell Hitler. He shrugs. Figures. Mainstream historical fact. On the morning of December 17th, the German 5th and 6th Panzer armies had driven deep into the American lines, creating gaps more than 50 miles wide. Yet, their advance was already off schedule by nearly a full day, an eternity in a blitzkrieg. Roads choked with vehicles, poor radio coordination, and unexpected American resistance turned the sleek plan into something far messier. Quirky tidbit. Many American soldiers, desperate to navigate the labyrinth of Ardennes backroads, began using captured German compasses, which, as they later discovered, pointed slightly off due to local magnetic anomalies. Several units marched in perfect confidence, in the wrong direction. At headquarters, Eisenhower's staff finally accepts reality. The Germans have launched a major offensive, and the front is in danger of collapse. Ike is unflappable as ever. He simply says, the present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity. A pause, then a grin. This time the enemy has stuck his head out, and we're going to cut it off. Still, optimism doesn't thaw frozen men or unclog snowbound roads. The weather continues to ground Allied aircraft. Pilots wait in their cockpits, itching for the skies to clear. Without them, the Germans can move freely, their convoys rumbling through the mist like ghost trains. You overhear a lieutenant briefing his platoon. If you get cut off, head west. If west doesn't exist anymore, head toward the gunfire and hope it's ours. You can't help but laugh, grimly but sincerely. At this point, laughter's cheaper than hope. Somewhere north, German forces slam into the 99th and 2nd Infantry Divisions near Elsenborn Ridge. It's brutal, close-quarters fighting, but the Americans dig in and refuse to yield. Their defense will become one of the anchors of the entire front, halting the German right flank and buying precious time for reinforcements. You'll hear more about that ridge later, but for now, it's just a name passed along the line with awe and disbelief. They're still holding. Historians still argue whether Allied High Command underestimated the Ardennes risk out of hubris or simply human fatigue. After all, months of victory since Normandy had bred a sense that Germany was finished. One historian called it the lull before the last gunshot. Others claim even perfect intelligence wouldn't have stopped the blow. It was too sudden, too concentrated, too well camouflaged. By nightfall, you find shelter in a half-collapsed barn with 5 others. You light a single candle and the tiny flame throws monstrous shadows on the rafters. Someone passes around a tin of corned beef. Another reads from a crumpled letter he never finished writing. Outside, the snow begins again, soft, relentless, indifferent. You remember a joke from training camp. War is long periods of boredom punctuated by seconds of sheer panic. It's not funny now, but the words fit perfectly. The seconds of panic have stretched into days, and boredom has been replaced by exhaustion. Later that night, you wake to distant engine noise. You crawl to the door and peer out. Across the valley, tiny pinpricks of light move along the road, German headlights, covered and dimmed. You can almost trace the line of the advance, winding westward like a snake in the snow. Somewhere beyond that line lies Bastogne, and beyond Bastogne, the Meuse River, the dream prize of Hitler's gamble. You lie back and exhale slowly, watching your breath drift toward the ceiling beams. The candle's out. The dark feels thick enough to touch. Someone murmurs in his sleep, "We're gonna stop them, right?" You don't answer. The next day, the fog begins to thin in places, revealing scenes that don't seem quite real. Frozen trucks abandoned on the road, rifles half buried in snow, a field of churned earth where yesterday there was forest. You stumble past a wrecked tank, one of ours, turret blown clean off. On the side, someone's written in charcoal, "Merry Christmas." Gallows humor, the soldier's last luxury. In a nearby village, you see German prisoners for the first time. They look as cold and exhausted as you do, gray-faced, coughing, shivering. War has a way of sanding the edges off ideology. Everyone just looks human now, wrapped in mud and fatigue. You hear the distant thump of artillery again, closer this time. The front is shifting like a living thing. Orders change hourly. Hold here, fall back there, regroup somewhere else. You stop trying to understand and just keep moving. That night, as the wind rattles through shattered trees, you catch the smell of pine resin and burning fuel. You think about home, about warm lights and music, about someone out there not knowing where you are. You let that thought sit for a while, then pack it away, like everything else that hurts. Somewhere ahead, the battle is building toward its first great stand, Elsenborn Ridge, St. Vith, Bastogne. You're not there yet, but you can feel the current pulling you that way. The quiet is ending, and soon the real storm begins. The dawn of December 16th had been the thunderclap. The next days are the deluge. You stumble through churned snow where artillery shells have carved shallow ponds of ice and mud. The trees around you look skeletal, stripped of branches by shrapnel, the ground littered with fragments of men's lives. Canteens, torn photographs, a single glove with its owner long gone. The fog has lifted just enough to reveal the scale of disaster. The line, once a tidy set of dots on a headquarters map, has dissolved into chaos. By now, the word is everywhere. Offensive. You hear it shouted, whispered, cursed under breath. The Germans aren't probing anymore. They're breaking through. Roads that yesterday carried field kitchens now carry refugees and retreating troops. And you, well, you're somewhere in between, marching through a winter that seems determined to erase everything. Down a slope, the sky suddenly flares. German artillery opens up again, and the sound rolls through the valley like surf. You duck instinctively, even though the rounds are landing far ahead. Every concussion feels personal. Nearby, a jeep overturns on the icy road. Two medics rush forward to pull the driver free. It's routine now, like brushing your teeth, if brushing your teeth involved shrapnel. You reach a crossroads where a handful of engineers are frantically wiring charges to a bridge. They work with the grim focus of men who know they'll have to blow it under their own feet if the timing goes wrong. "Give us 5 more minutes," one shouts as a tank rumbles past. Nobody has 5 minutes anymore. The Germans come fast and hard. Columns of infantry in white camouflage cloaks move between the trees like ghosts. Behind them, tanks grind forward. Panthers, Tigers, and the smaller Panzer IVs that still form the bulk of the armored divisions. The snow muffles their engines until they're almost on top of you. Then it's chaos. Gunfire, smoke, shouted orders, a cacophony that leaves your ears ringing. You take cover in a shallow ditch as shells whistle overhead. The air smells of cordite and pine. Your rifle is cold in your hands, your breath freezing against the stock. The German advance feels unstoppable, an avalanche of steel and discipline. Mainstream historical fact. In those first 48 hours, the German spearheads shattered the American 106th Infantry Division near the Schnee Eifel, capturing over 6,000 men. the largest US surrender in Europe. Entire companies vanished into captivity before they even knew a full-scale offensive was underway. A quirky tidbit: some German officers reportedly carried Christmas cakes baked by their families, confident they'd be celebrating in Antwerp by the holiday. Many of those cakes were later found in burned-out trucks or snowbanks, still wrapped in foil. Small, absurd relics of misplaced optimism. You watch as an American artillery battery opens fire behind you, the guns thudding rhythmically. Each muzzle flash lights up the faces of the crew, young and grimy, shouting over the noise. They know they're firing blind, no forward observers, no clear lines of communication, but they fire anyway, because silence would be worse. Then, a terrible sound. Click, click, thud. One gun jams. Another runs out of shells. The crews scramble to pack up, but the road behind is jammed with vehicles trying to flee west. The whole landscape becomes a tangle of metal and panic. You push on foot towards St. Vith, the key crossroads where every rumor says the Americans are trying to form a new line. Along the way, you pass soldiers who've thrown away their rifles, civilians leading ox carts, MPs trying to wave people in opposite directions at once. "Keep moving," someone yells. Nobody knows where. At a burned-out farmhouse, a squad of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne has set up a hasty defense. You join them, more for company than orders. Their sergeant greets you with a tired grin. "Welcome to the Ardennes holiday resort," he says, gesturing to the shattered windows. "All-inclusive shellfire package." You laugh, because what else can you do? The next few hours are a blur of noise and snow. German shells tear through the treetops. Branches rain down like wooden spears. You help reload a machine gun until the barrel glows faintly red. When it finally cracks, you switch to your rifle, firing at shapes in the smoke. You think you hit one, maybe two, but the forest swallows everything. When dusk comes, it's red and eerie. The snow has turned pink in places where men fell. A medic drags someone into cover and mutters, "He's still breathing," though you can tell from the tone he's not. You pull your blanket tighter and try not to look. Historians still argue whether the early American retreat was cowardice or necessity. Some units broke completely, abandoning positions without orders. Others held on until they were annihilated. The truth, as usual, is messy. The US line had been stretched thin for rest and refit, manned by inexperienced troops who suddenly found themselves facing elite panzer divisions. Under that kind of shock, collapse wasn't cowardice, it was physics. By midnight, the gunfire has faded to distant rumblings. The temperature drops below freezing. You can hear the creak of trees under the weight of ice. A lone GI starts humming Silent Night, voice trembling with exhaustion. No one tells him to stop. You think back to something your drill sergeant said months ago. You don't win wars by dying for your country. You win by making the other poor bastard die for his. Tonight, it feels like both sides forgot that rule. Somewhere to the north, at Elsenborn Ridge, American artillery continues firing through the night, refusing to yield. To the south, the German 5th Panzer Army claws toward Bastogne, a name still just a dot on the map, but soon to become legend. And in between, where you are, the line is a blur of survival, neither holding nor retreating, just existing, hour by hour. You wake again before dawn to find your rifle frozen to the ground. You pry it loose, flexing numb fingers. The sky is clear for once, revealing a pale, pitiless sun. The silence is immense. For the first time in days, no shells fall. You wonder if the Germans have run out of ammunition, or if they're simply regrouping. An officer trudges by with frost rhyming his eyebrows. "We're pulling back to the next ridge," he says. "Don't wait for trucks, they're all gone." You nod and shoulder your pack. Behind you, someone mutters, "We're retreating again?" You turn and answer, "We're not retreating, we're just moving the front." It's half joke, half prayer. Hours later, you pass a frozen stream clogged with wreckage. Helmets, rifles, a jeep turned turtle. A dead horse lies half submerged, steam still rising faintly from its flank. You look away quickly. The smell of cordite and wet leather fills the air. By evening, you reach a makeshift command post, an old tavern where maps are pinned to the walls and the radio crackles constantly. An exhausted major briefs the gathered officers. Hold the roads. Every hour we delay them buys time for the 9th Armored to fall back and Patton to come up. The name Patton travels through the room like a spark of hope. If anyone can turn chaos into order, it's him. For now though, all you can do is dig another hole in the frozen earth, reload your rifle, and hope the next German shell picks a different target. You rub warmth into your hands and look around at the other faces, some too young to shave, others hollow-eyed with experience. Snow begins to fall again, fine and endless. It covers the wreckage, the tracks, the dead. It softens everything, hides everything. The forest sleeps for a few hours, pretending it's just winter again. You know better, because deep in those woods, the panzers are still moving, engines growling like distant thunder, and the Battle of the Bulge has only just begun. By the time you reach the northern sector, the snow has thickened to a curtain. Visibility is a joke. You can barely see your own breath. The wind slices through your coat like paper, stinging your face until you stop noticing the pain. And yet, here on a ridge of frozen mud and broken pines, men dig in with numb hands and grim determination. This is Elsenborn Ridge, the northern hinge of the entire front, and it's about to decide the fate of the German offensive. You climb through a maze of foxholes, the smell of cordite still heavy in the air from the morning's shelling. Artillerymen crouch behind their guns, boots frozen to the metal decks. The men of the 2nd and 99th Infantry Divisions are stretched thin, but their orders are simple. Hold. No retreat, no fallback, just hold this narrow ridge that commands the roads below. When the first German assault comes, it's muffled by snow. Machine guns chatter like teeth, and the forest fills with ghostly shapes moving uphill. The GIs wait until the last moment before opening fire, rifles cracking in sharp rhythm. The snow explodes around the attackers, and within minutes, the slope is littered with bodies, dark stains spreading across white ground. You reload by instinct, your hands so numb you can't feel the clips. The noise becomes a blur. Shouting, explosions, the metallic whine of ricochets. Then, just as suddenly, silence. The survivors pull back into the trees, and you exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. Mainstream historical fact. At Elsenborn Ridge, the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division, supported by massive artillery fire, halted the advance of the German 6th Panzer Army, the elite spearhead meant to seize Liège and drive to Antwerp. Their stubborn defense from December 17th onward prevented the northern flank from collapsing, forcing the Germans to divert forces southward and delaying their entire timetable. You take shelter behind a shattered tree trunk. A nearby soldier, face smeared with soot, mutters, "So much for Hitler's surprise party." You manage a grin. Yeah, he brought cake, but forgot the candles. The man laughs once, short, hoarse, and goes back to loading belts into his machine gun. Behind you, the artillery batteries roar again. The ridge is alive with thunder, every gun firing in overlapping cadence. Snow plumes rise and settle, fusing with the low gray clouds. Each shell that screams overhead feels like a promise to the men in front. We've got your back. In one corner of the ridge, engineers work feverishly to reinforce the muddy roads. Trucks bog down halfway up the slope. Drivers curse and push, praying they don't become targets for German mortars. You lend a hand, slipping on ice, your breath clouding the air. Somewhere above, a radio crackles with static and half-words. Counterattack, left flank, tanks advancing. God help us. You glance up as a shell lands nearby, shaking loose a shower of snow from the treetops. For a few seconds, it looks almost peaceful. Flakes swirling lazily down, catching the glow of distant fires. Then another explosion snaps you back to reality. Historians still argue whether Elsenborn Ridge was the true turning point of the Battle of the Bulge. Some credit Bastogne, others Patton's counterattack, but many point to this cold, miserable hill where ordinary infantry and artillerymen broke the back of Hitler's grand plan before it could ever reach full momentum. A quirky tidbit: because of the extreme cold, soldiers joked that their coffee froze before it hit their stomachs. One gun crew even brewed soup in their howitzer shell casings, boiling snow over gunpowder heat and seasoning it with whatever they could scrounge. Best chow in Belgium, they said, if you like the taste of brass. By the fourth day of fighting, the ridge is a graveyard of trees and spent shells. The ground quakes from continuous bombardment. Men dig deeper, sleep in bursts, eat frozen rations, and occasionally swap grim humor to stay sane. Someone paints "Welcome to the Ardennes Ski Club" on a destroyed German half-track. You catch a glimpse of a chaplain crawling along the line, offering words and cigarettes in equal measure. "You boys doing God's work," he says, handing you a smoke. You take it, grin faintly, and reply, "Tell him we're short on artillery shells." The chaplain chuckles and moves on, his breath frosting in the air. When the Germans attack again, they come with everything: infantry, tanks, mortars. The ground shakes as panthers grind up the slope, their machine guns spitting fire. You and your squad open up with rifles and bazookas, aiming for the treads, praying to hit something vital. One bazooka misfires. The operator curses, reloads, and fires again. The rocket slams into the lead tank, sending smoke pouring from its hatch. The rest hesitate, then begin to back down the hill. You can almost feel their doubt through the snow. For the first time in days, you sense momentum shift. The men cheer, a low rumble of disbelief. "We stopped them," someone yells. "We actually stopped them." You don't cheer. You just lean against your foxhole wall and let the relief wash over you, like warmth from a fire you can't quite see. When night falls, the ridge is eerily calm. The sky has cleared just enough to reveal faint stars. You stare at them for a while, remembering the simple things: quiet streets, warm beds, laughter that isn't strained. The wind sighs through the pines, carrying faint echoes of distant battle. Below, the valleys burn. You can see flashes where other units are fighting, tiny bursts of light across a black sea of trees. Somewhere down there, the 1st SS Panzer Division is regrouping, still determined to break through. But their schedule is slipping. Their fuel is dwindling, and the ridge you're standing on has turned into a wall they can't cross. By now, you've stopped counting days. Time is measured in artillery salvos and refilled magazines. A runner brings word from command: "Hold another 24 hours. You laugh softly. They always say 24 hours. It's the Army's polite way of saying forever. You find a half-buried pack of playing cards in the snow, left behind by some earlier unit. You and 2 buddies play a few hands under a poncho by flashlight. Someone jokes that the winner gets to go home first. You all laugh, because even pretending feels good. By Christmas Eve, the ridge has earned a reputation. German prisoners whisper about the Americans who never move. Allied command finally acknowledges that Elsenborn is holding firm. Reinforcements are coming. The men on the ridge just keep their heads down and keep firing. You remember one officer saying, "We're not fighting for ground, we're fighting for time." You didn't understand it then. Now you do. Every hour you hold here gives the rest of the line a chance to regroup. Every delay chokes another drop of fuel from the German tanks. The ridge isn't just dirt and snow anymore. It's a clock, ticking down to the moment the offensive dies. When dawn breaks again, you see the enemy withdrawing. It's not a full retreat, not yet, but their attacks have lost their bite. The ridge still smokes, the air still hums with tension, but something deep inside you whispers that the worst is past. You light a cigarette, hands trembling. The smoke curls upward and vanishes into the morning fog. The forest smells of cordite and pine sap, and beneath it all, the faint sweetness of thawing snow. For the first time since this nightmare began, the silence feels earned. You survived the ridge. For now. When the ridge quiets, you almost believe the worst is over. But war has a habit of shifting horrors sideways rather than ending them. South of your position, something brutal and fast is carving its way through the forest roads. Kampf group of Piper. You first hear of it through rumor. A runner from another unit arrives at dusk, pale and shivering, muttering, SS armor, black uniforms, burned everything. No one wants to believe him, but by morning, the name Piper becomes a curse whispered along the frozen trenches. Joachim Piper, 29 years old, ambitious, fanatically loyal to Himmler, commands an armored spearhead of the 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. His orders are simple and impossible. Push west faster than anyone else, capture fuel dumps along the way, cross the Meuse, and open the road to Antwerp. He's been promised glory, but what he gets is mud, traffic jams, and moral collapse. You picture his column snaking through the mist, tanks painted with whitewash for camouflage, half-tracks loaded with grenadiers, motorcycles weaving ahead to scout. The roar of engines echoes through the forest, bouncing off the pines like thunder. The ground trembles before the column even appears. Then, the thunder reaches a crossroads near a Belgian village called Bastogne, outside Malmedy. At noon on December 17th, Piper's tanks overrun an American convoy of engineers and artillerymen. Outnumbered and surprised, the GIs surrender. They're herded into a snowy field while the Germans move on. But a few SS men linger behind, impatient, angry, maybe frightened. What happens next becomes one of the most infamous atrocities of the Western Front. Gunfire cracks through the cold air. When it stops, the snow is no longer white. Mainstream historical fact. The Malmedy massacre left more than 80 unarmed American prisoners dead, shot in cold blood. News of it spread quickly through the ranks, hardening every Allied soldier's resolve. No one doubted now what they were fighting against. You don't witness the massacre itself, but its echo reaches you days later. A captured German is marched past your unit, hands bound, eyes downcast. A corporal beside you mutters, "After Malmedy, no mercy." You watch the prisoner stumble on the ice and wonder, not for the first time, whether vengeance ever balances the scales. The forest, meanwhile, swallows Piper's progress. His armored column races west, but moves slower every mile. Roads are clogged with wrecked vehicles. Fuel is vanishing, and American engineers keep blowing bridges in his path. The great dash to the Meuse becomes a crawl. Still, he pushes on, ruthless as the cold itself. You imagine him at night, standing beside his Tiger II tank, maps spread on the hood, snowflakes hissing on the metal. His men are exhausted, half-starved, low on ammunition. The promise of reaching Antwerp by Christmas now feels like a sick joke. Yet he drives them forward, convinced that momentum alone can bend reality. A quirky tidbit. Piper's column actually included a captured American Jeep with its own loudspeaker. German soldiers used it to broadcast fake orders in English to confuse roadblocks ahead. Unfortunately for them, their accents were so heavy that one American officer later joked, they sounded like Dracula giving traffic directions. Back on your sector, the snow keeps falling. The forest glows faintly orange from fires beyond the hills. You march through villages that exist only on maps now, just blackened chimneys and frozen wells. Once, you pass a barn where a lone cow stands chewing placidly amid ruin. Someone salutes it. The last Belgian still at his post. Even in hell, humor survives. Piper's spearhead reaches the town of Stavelot on the 18th. The Germans seize it briefly, but are driven out by furious counterattacks. When Piper tries to retake the town, he finds his rear cut off, bridges destroyed, fuel depots burning. He's trapped in a pocket of his own making. What was meant to be the sharpest knife of the offensive is now a stranded blade, dulling in the cold. You hear reports of his tanks abandoned in the snow, engines drained, crews setting them on fire before fleeing on foot. One by one, the proud steel beasts melt into black husks. The offensive that was supposed to carve through the Ardennes now leaves behind a trail of wreckage and ghosts. Historians still argue whether Piper was a capable commander doomed by impossible logistics or simply a fanatic who mistook brutality for strategy. His reputation remains a battlefield of its own, heroic to some, monstrous to most. What no one disputes is that his drive west faltered, not from courage or bullets, but from fuel. The German war machine ran on gasoline, and the Ardennes gave it none. Meanwhile, Allied headquarters finally stabilizes its nerves. Reinforcements are on the move, divisions redeploying from the north and south. The sky, still thick with clouds, feels like a lid over the world. Everyone waits for it to break, because when it does, the Allies' greatest weapon, air power, will return. You spend that night crouched beside a roadside fire, your rifle across your knees. The flames paint the snow in shades of gold and crimson. A buddy from Pennsylvania tells you he used to ski before the war. Never thought I'd do it with a rifle, he says. You grin. Bet the lift tickets were cheaper. The laughter comes easily, a release valve hissing open for just a second before the cold clamps it shut again. Morning brings a brittle calm. You patrol the forest edge, hearing the distant clank of armor. Somewhere beyond the next ridge, Piper's men are still fighting, still trying to claw their way west. But the fuel drums are empty now. German soldiers begin siphoning gasoline from civilian cars, even from their own trucks. Some carry jerry cans on sleds, sweating under the weight. A lone American scout plane appears overhead, low and wobbling. The men on the ground cheer, the first aircraft they've seen in days. It vanishes into cloud, but its brief presence feels like a promise. The weather will break soon. When it does, hell will fall from the sky. In a captured farmhouse used as a temporary command post, you find a German diary left behind. The entries are neat, written in pencil. 15th of December, we march soon. The Führer promises victory. Weather good for us. 19th December, no food 2 days. Bridges blown. Men tired. 21st December, the snow is too white. It blinds me. I dream of home. You close the book gently and set it back on the table. War shrinks everyone's handwriting. Later, word spreads that Piper's last units have abandoned their vehicles near the village of La Glaise. Some escape through the woods, others surrender. The feared black-clad spearhead, once the terror of the Ardennes, is gone, buried under its own ambition and the weight of winter. You walk through the aftermath days later. Burned tanks stand like monuments to folly. The snow has covered the dead, leaving only helmets and gun barrels poking through. You pass one vehicle with its engine hatch open, the smell of frozen oil sharp in the air. Someone has scratched words into the soot. Kein Benzin, kein Sieg. No fuel, no victory. That night, you write a line in your own journal. The Germans aren't just losing the war, they're running out of weather. You don't know it yet, but the collapse of Piper's column will mark the high water mark of Hitler's final gamble. From here on, the Bulge will shrink, the tide reversing as surely as dawn. But for now, as you huddle under your blanket, listening to the wind scrape the trees, it still feels endless, like the world has frozen in place and decided never to move again. You close your eyes, the fire flickering low. Somewhere beyond the ridge, engines die one by one, and silence reclaims the forest. The snow keeps falling, gentle and unhurried, covering everything that was loud, cruel, or certain. Tomorrow, the sun might come out. When it does, the reckoning will begin. You move south towards St. Vith, boots crunching through a landscape that looks carved out of chalk and ash. The sky hangs low, swollen with more snow, and the wind blows in hard from the east, carrying the smell of burned oil and pine smoke. Somewhere ahead, an officer's voice cuts through the wind, short, clipped, strained. This is it, boys. St. Vith's the key. The name hardly registers at first. It's just another town on another map. But to the German 5th Panzer Army, St. Vith is the crossroads to everything. North toward Elsenborn, west toward the Meuse, south toward Bastogne. Whoever controls it controls the rhythm of the entire offensive. You arrive just before dawn on December 18th. The town sits in a shallow valley, its church spire cracked, its streets lined with half-buried trucks and a few dazed civilians who haven't yet fled. Somewhere in the square, engineers are laying mines while MPs direct convoys with gloved hands. The 7th Armored Division is already there, digging in beside remnants of the 106th and 28th Infantry Divisions. No one has slept in days. Someone offers you coffee thick as tar. You drink it anyway, because it's warm and it's hope in a tin cup. The rumble starts before sunrise. German artillery feeling for range, shells landing in lazy arcs that get closer with every round. Then comes the crack of tank guns, sharp as splitting ice. The enemy is here. You run between houses turned to splinters, the air alive with the sound of ricochets. American tank destroyers trade shots with Panthers across the snow-covered fields. Every impact throws up fountains of white powder. Smoke and snow mix until you can't tell them apart. A lieutenant shouts, "We're buying time, not real estate," and the line echoes with laughter that's half hysteria, half defiance. He's right. St. Vith isn't meant to be held forever. It's meant to delay, to drag the German timetable into the mud. Mainstream historical fact. The defense of St. Vith, lasting from December 17th to 23rd, 1944, tied down key elements of General McAuliffe's 5th Panzer Army. Though vastly outnumbered, American units under General Bruce Clark held the crossroads for nearly a week, long enough to unravel the precision of Hitler's grand offensive. You take cover behind the wreck of a jeep, the hood riddled with holes. The snow around it is peppered with brass casings that glitter in the firelight like strange currency. Beside you, a radio operator swears under his breath. His set keeps freezing. You smack it with your glove and catch half a transmission. Hold position, reinforcements, delayed. It's always delayed. You glance up the main street and see the church steeple silhouetted against a sky full of falling ash. There's something absurdly calm about it, like it's watching history ruin itself again, same as always. Quirky tidbit. Amid the fighting, the town's telephone switchboard, manned by 2 Belgian operators, stayed active until the very last moment. Between shell bursts, they connected frantic calls from one unit to another, refusing to evacuate. When asked later why, one replied, "Someone had to keep talking." By nightfall the first day, the situation looks grim. The Germans have encircled 3 sides, artillery raining down from the hills. Yet the Americans still hold the crossroads. You crouch in a cellar that smells of damp wood and kerosene, trading cigarettes for chocolate with a group of paratroopers who wandered in from another sector. One of them jokes, "We're surrounded." Great, now we can attack in any direction. You groan, but it helps. Outside, snow drifts through shattered windows. Every gust scatters plaster dust across the room. Someone hums a few bars of "I'll be home for Christmas," and for a heartbeat, you forget there's a war at all. Then the next barrage hits and the illusion collapses. Historians still argue whether Clark should have pulled out sooner. Some say holding St. Vith so long risked annihilation. Others claim his stubborn stand bought the Allies the time that saved Bastogne. Maybe both are true. Strategy looks neat only on paper. Out here, it's written in exhaustion and luck. On the 20th, you're ordered to fall back a few miles west. But fall back means fight through snow-clogged roads while enemy tanks shell every intersection. You move, house by house, ducking through back doors, rifles slipping in your hands. The wind turns every shout into white vapor. Somewhere behind you, a fuel truck explodes, and the fire paints the night blood red. By dawn, you've reached the next ridgeline. You look back towards St. Vith just in time to see it vanish in smoke. The Germans finally occupy the ruins, but it's a hollow victory. Their timetable is wrecked, their armored columns tangled in traffic jams, their fuel supply bleeding away. For them, St. Vith becomes a grave made of crossroads. You slump beside a frozen ditch, too tired even to shiver. A medic walks by and tosses you a stick of gum. "Compliments of the Red Cross," he says. You nod and chew until the flavor's gone, then keep chewing anyway, just for the motion, the illusion of something normal. The next night, you share a foxhole with a tank crewman who lost his Sherman 2 days ago. He tells you, in the tone of someone reciting a bedtime story, how his crew escaped through the hatch as the ammo cooked off. "She went up like the 4th of July, he says. Pretty, if you forget what's inside. You don't answer. The silence between words feels safer than words themselves. Mainstream historical fact. Whispered by rumor even then. By the time the Germans took the smoking shell of St. Vith, they were 4 crucial days behind schedule. Their dream of reaching the Meuse before Christmas was gone. Every hour they spent here drained fuel they'd never replace. A week later, you return to the outskirts. The snow has buried the wreckage, smoothing the jagged ruins into strange, white sculptures. Somewhere beneath that silence lie men from both sides, frozen together in history's indifference. You stand for a moment, remove your helmet, and let the snow fall on your hair. A sergeant nearby murmurs, "Well, they wanted a Bulge. We gave them one, in their calendar." You smile despite yourself. Soldiers always find the joke, even when the punchline's written in smoke. Quirky echo. One GI who fought here kept a small souvenir after the battle, a piece of charred wood from the church steeple. He carved it into a cross and wore it on a string around his neck for the rest of the war. When asked why, he said, "Because it didn't fall till we left." The line stabilizes again, though no one dares call it victory. The cold remains the truest enemy. Frostbite cases now outnumber gunshot wounds. You see men walking on wrapped feet, their toes black with necrosis, and still they joke, "At least we'll save on shoe polish." Each night the horizon flashes as artillery trades places. The sound becomes background music, distant thunder, strangely rhythmic, almost lulling. When you finally lie down, you dream not of home, but of silence, of a world without the echo of guns. Historians still argue whether Hitler's plan might have worked if St. Vith had fallen sooner. Some think his forces could have reached the Meuse before the Allies regrouped. Others say fuel and logistics doomed it from the start. The debate fills bookshelves, but you know the truth that doesn't fit on a chart. The difference between victory and failure in the Ardennes was measured not in miles, but in hours, bought by freezing, frightened men who refused to move. You light one last cigarette before sleeping. The ember glows briefly, a tiny sun in the dark. You watch it fade and whisper to the wind, "We held." The snow answers softly, covering your footprints as if erasing evidence that anyone was ever here. St. Vith is gone, but its delay has already begun to ripple outward. To the west, another name is rising, Bastogne, ringed by 7 roads and 7 divisions of German steel. Tomorrow, you'll hear about it. Tomorrow, you'll march again. You wake in a farmhouse that no longer has a roof. The morning light filters through the skeletal beams, glinting off the icicles that hang where rafters used to be. The fire in the hearth has long since gone out, leaving only a crust of white ash. You brush snow off your blanket, stretch stiff muscles, and listen. Far in the distance, there's the steady thump of artillery. East. Always east. Someone mutters, "That's Bastogne." The name is new to you, but not for long. The 101st Airborne has been rushed there, paratroopers pulled from rest camps, some still missing their winter gear. Their orders are simple: hold the town. Bastogne sits at the junction of 7 roads, and those roads are the arteries of the German advance. Lose Bastogne, and the whole southern flank collapses. Keep it, and the Bulge bleeds out before it reaches the Meuse. You're ordered to move south that same morning. The march is slow, through drifts waist-deep in places. Every breath feels like swallowing knives. Convoys clog the roads. Trucks, ambulances, artillery pieces, all fighting for space. Civilians with carts pick their way between them, wrapped in shawls, faces blank with shock. A child waves to you from the back of a wagon, and you wave back automatically, unsure whether to smile. By the time you reach the outskirts, Bastogne looks like a postcard turned inside out. Smoke curls from chimneys and shell holes alike. Church bells lie cracked in the street. The paratroopers are already here, mud-streaked, joking, defiant. You find one sitting on a crate of rations, sharpening his bayonet. "They say we're surrounded," he says without looking up. "Good. Saves us the trouble of finding the Krauts." You can't help but grin. The siege begins on December 20th. German armor closes the ring, cutting all 7 roads. No trucks in, no wounded out. The paratroopers dig in around the perimeter, each company stretched thin over frozen ground. Foxholes turn into ice baths. Rations run short. The only thing that doesn't freeze is morale. Mainstream historical fact: Bastogne's defense was commanded by Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, acting in place of the 101st's regular division commander. When German officers demanded his surrender on December 22nd, his one-word reply entered legend: nuts. It wasn't just defiance, it was exhaustion distilled into comedy. And somehow, it worked. You picture the scene. McAuliffe, bleary-eyed in his headquarters, holding the German ultimatum while his staff stares in silence. He scratches his head, shrugs, and mutters, "Aw, nuts," then turns to his aide. "Write that down." The messenger who carried the reply back must have wondered whether the Americans had finally lost their minds. The shelling that follows makes the earth shake. Bastogne becomes a bowl of thunder. Every building that isn't stone collapses. The hospital, set up in a schoolhouse, overflows with wounded. The smell of antiseptic mixes with the metallic tang of blood and smoke. Medics work by candlelight because power's been cut for days. Outside, snow drifts against shattered walls, hiding the bodies of men who never made it inside. Quirky tidbit. With supplies so low, GIs began melting snow in helmets for water and using sea rations as currency. A single chocolate bar could buy you a pair of dry socks or a favor from a Jeep driver. When cigarettes ran out, men tore pages from hymnals to roll makeshift smokes. The chaplain, reportedly, didn't mind. You hunker down in a trench on the western edge, your hands swollen and cracked from the cold. The Germans broadcast loudspeaker messages at night. "Americans, you are encircled. Surrender and live." A voice from your side answers through a bullhorn. "Sorry, can't hear you. Too busy winning." Laughter ripples through the line. Humor again. The universal armor. At night, the snow glows faintly blue. You watch flares arc overhead and listen to the rhythmic thud of mortars. One shell lands close enough to shower your foxhole with ice and dirt. You brush it off, whisper a curse, and keep loading your rifle. The sound of machine guns becomes as familiar as breathing. Historians still argue whether Bastogne's defense was strategically necessary or symbolically essential. Some claim the Germans could have bypassed it entirely. Others insist it anchored the southern flank and doomed the offensive. The truth probably lies somewhere between tactics and morale. A surrounded division refusing to yield sends a message no map can measure. On Christmas Eve, the shelling reaches its crescendo. The ground shakes, and the church spire collapses in the square. You can hear carols drifting faintly from a radio somewhere. "I'll be home for Christmas," playing through static. A medic next to you murmurs, "Guess not this year." You grin tiredly. "Hey, we're already home. It's just colder than usual." In the early hours of the 24th, the sky finally clears. You're too numb to notice at first, until someone shouts, "Look up!" And there they are, dark silhouettes cutting across the dawn. Allied planes. C-47s dropping parachute canisters full of supplies. Fighters screaming low to strafe German positions. You cheer until your voice cracks. For days you'd fought blind and starving. Now the sky itself feels like reinforcements. Mainstream historical fact. The break in weather on December 23rd allowed Allied air power to return in full force. Over the next 48 hours, hundreds of tons of ammunition, food, and medical supplies were dropped into Bastogne. Fighter bombers ravaged German convoys and artillery, turning the siege into a death trap for the attackers. Quirky tidbit. One crate that parachuted in contained nothing but Christmas mail that had been stuck in France for weeks. Men tore into it like treasure. Letters from home, wrinkled photographs, postcards that smelled faintly of perfume. For a few hours, the war felt far away again. You crouch in your foxhole that night and read a letter from your own sister, written in careful script. I hope the snow is pretty where you are. You laugh out loud. Sure, it's gorgeous, you mutter, especially when it explodes. The German attacks continue into the 25th, but their ferocity has dulled. You can see it in the way they advance, hesitant, weary, out of fuel. Some prisoners captured that day admit they haven't eaten properly in 3 days. The offensive that began as thunder now sputters like a dying engine. Historians still argue whether the German command realized then that the operation was doomed. Manteuffel reportedly begged to withdraw and regroup, but Hitler refused. "The enemy will break before we do," he insisted. You shake your head when you hear that later. The enemy had already broken, just not the one he thought. On December 26th, you hear the first distant rumble of tanks from the south. At first, you think it's another German assault. Then a radio operator bursts from his dugout, waving his arms. It's ours. It's the 4th Armored. You climb out of your foxhole and squint down the road. Through the haze, you see olive-drab tanks rolling forward, stars painted on their hulls. Men riding them wave and shout. Someone throws a helmet in the air. The siege is broken. Bastogne, against every sane expectation, has held. You laugh until your sides ache, the sound turning half to tears. The paratrooper beside you grins and says, "Told you we weren't surrounded. We were just collecting Germans." The next day, the snow begins to melt slightly, forming rivulets that glisten in the sunlight. The smell of smoke lingers, but underneath it, there's something cleaner, fresher. You walk through the ruined town square past wrecked tanks and shattered walls, and feel the strange quiet that follows survival. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell, miraculously unbroken, rings once. You stop and listen. The note hangs in the cold air like a heartbeat. The worst of the storm is passing, though the war itself isn't done. But for now, in this small corner of Belgium, courage has outlasted winter. The line still holds. When the skies finally open, it's like the world exhales. You wake to sunlight pouring through the fog, the first real light in more than a week. The snow glitters instead of swallowing sound. The forest seems sharper, alive again. But with the brightness comes something else. Revenge from above. You watch as the first wave of Allied aircraft roars in low over the treetops. The engines tear through the silence like a promise kept too long. P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoons dive on the German columns still jammed along the narrow Ardennes roads, their rockets streaking white through the cold air. Each impact blooms into black smoke, echoing off the hills. The men around you cheer hoarsely, voices cracked and raw. One private throws his helmet in the air and shouts, "Merry Christmas!" Another mutters, "About damn time the weather got patriotic." You laugh until you cough. The sound feels alien after days of huddled silence. For a week, the Germans had moved freely under their gray cloak of clouds. Now the lid is gone, and they're naked to the sky. Mainstream historical fact. Beginning on December 23rd, Allied air power returned in full force. The U.S. 9th Air Force and RAF bombers targeted road junctions, bridges, and supply convoys. The effect was devastating. Hundreds of vehicles destroyed, columns scattered, fuel depots ignited. What had been an offensive now began to look like a retreat in slow motion. You march along a road cratered by bombs, stepping over twisted wrecks. Dead horses lie in harness beside wagons burned to cinders. A German half-track smolders by the ditch, its machine gun pointing uselessly toward the sky. The air smells of cordite, hot metal, and something worse. Something sweet and sour that never quite leaves your nose afterward. Up ahead, you spot a pair of P-47s looping back for another run. They come in low, guns blazing, and you see tracers spark against a column of enemy trucks. Flames ripple outward, and for a heartbeat, you glimpse tiny figures, scattering like ants. The roar passes, and the echo fades into the trees. The men in your squad fall silent. Even victory has its price, and up close, it doesn't look glorious. A quirky tidbit. During these air raids, some pilots flew so low they returned with pine branches stuck in their wings. Ground crews called them Christmas decorations, and the name stuck for the rest of the campaign. You reach a crossroads where engineers are clearing wreckage to reopen supply routes. The sound of chainsaws mingles with the hum of generators and the faint buzz of flies that shouldn't exist in winter. One engineer wipes sweat from his forehead and mutters, "Hell froze over, and now we're thawing it by hand." The sunlight, welcome as it is, brings new problems. The snow begins to melt just enough to turn the roads into rivers of mud. Trucks sink to their axles. Men curse as they push and pull, slipping on slush that seems to mock every effort. A lieutenant with a clipboard yells, "Keep 'em moving! Patton's coming north!" The words carry through the air like a prayer. Somewhere to the south, the rumble of artillery grows steadier. Patton's Third Army, fresh, fast, furious, is swinging north like a hammer. His troops have pivoted 90 degrees in a maneuver so audacious that even the Germans, when they hear of it later, will call it unbelievable. Number 2. You pause at the edge of a frozen field and look down the valley. The sky is streaked with contrails. Sunlight glints off bomb craters filled with slush. You can almost feel the momentum shifting under your boots. The tide that froze in December is beginning to move again. Historians still argue whether the weather truly saved the Allies or merely hastened an inevitable German failure. Some point out that Hitler's offensive was already starving for fuel and coordination. Others insist the sudden Allied control of the air sealed its doom. You don't bother to pick sides. From where you stand, watching the sky rain steel, it feels simple. No army wins when it can't move. Back in Bastogne, paratroopers watch the dogfights unfold above them, leaning on their rifles as if attending a fireworks show. You stop there briefly to rest. The square that once echoed with shells now smells of fried bacon and oil. A jeep rolls past, its hood painted with Bastogne Express. Someone's even put a tiny Christmas tree on the front grille, decorated with bullet casings. You find a medic sitting on a crate outside the makeshift hospital. He's sipping coffee, eyes half closed. "You hear the news?" he asks. "Piper's columns finished. They burned their tanks, ran for the woods." You nod. "Guess Santa ran out of gas." The medic chuckles softly, then stares into his cup. "Still a lot of boys in those woods, though." The joke hangs there, cooling in the air between you. By the 27th, the German offensive is losing shape entirely. Supply lines cut, command scattered, morale cracking. You can see it even in the prisoners. Young, frostbitten faces, hands trembling as they hold their cigarettes. One, no older than 17, stares at the sky and whispers, "Unsere Flieger. Where are they?" You don't answer. A quirky human note among the chaos. Allied pilots began dropping candy bars tied to notes for the troops below. Some simply wrote, "From the sky with love." It sounds sentimental, maybe even absurd, but when you've lived in snow and fear for weeks, a bar of chocolate falling from heaven can feel like divine intervention. Each day grows brighter, the shadows shorter. The constant thunder of aircraft becomes background noise, comforting in its predictability. You start to recognize the engines by sound. P-51s, Typhoons, even lumbering C-47s carrying parachute canisters toward isolated pockets of men. But not every moment is triumph. On December 29th, you come across the wreckage of a downed fighter. The pilot didn't make it out. His plane lies half buried in the snow, a star still visible on the wing. Someone has placed his parachute over him like a blanket. You stop, remove your helmet, and whisper, "Rest easy, flyboy." The wind answers with a low sigh through the trees. By New Year's Eve, the Ardennes no longer looks like a battlefield so much as a scrapyard of ambition. Burned vehicles line every road, frozen corpses marking the paths of both advance and retreat. The sound of planes still fills the air, but the urgency has faded. The sky is allied now. The Germans fight on, but their thrust westward has stopped. Historians still debate whether any of this, the weather, the timing, the sheer stubbornness, was luck or design. To you, it feels more like endurance wearing a uniform, the kind that outlasts winter, hunger, and fear, until the world finally remembers what sunlight looks like. That night, your unit camps on high ground overlooking the valleys still filled with smoke. Someone finds an old bottle of schnapps in an abandoned farmhouse. You pass it around, the liquid burning like courage down your throat. A radio crackles faintly with a broadcast from London. Swing music. Tinny, but bright. For the first time in weeks, you feel almost human again. You look up. The stars are sharp against the black sky, unblurred by fog or snow. You trace the Big Dipper, just as you did as a kid. Then you catch yourself smiling, whispering under your breath, "It's over for them, isn't it?" No one answers, but they don't have to. You can feel it in the air, the shift, the unraveling, the long, slow retreat of an empire that once thought itself invincible. The Ardennes is no longer their cover, it's their tomb. As you lie down, the night hums with the distant sound of planes heading east, back toward bases you'll never see. Their engines fade into memory, like a promise finally kept. You close your eyes, let the rhythm lull you, and drift into uneasy sleep under a sky that, for the first time in weeks, belongs entirely to you. You wake to the sound of engines coughing somewhere down the road, heavy, strained, desperate. At first you think it's another Allied convoy moving up from the south, but the voices you hear are speaking German. You press yourself against the icy bank, listening. What you hear next isn't the sound of victory or defiance. It's the sound of empty fuel tanks. The offensive has run out of breath. For weeks, the German advance had depended on one fragile artery: gasoline. Every panther, every tiger, every truck in this frozen forest runs on fumes. And those fumes are almost gone. The supply columns that were supposed to feed them have been torn apart by air attacks and roadblocks. Capturing Allied fuel depots was part of the plan, but most of those dumps were destroyed by retreating engineers. The Germans are now reduced to raiding gas cans from abandoned jeeps and even from civilian cars. You follow a road littered with their failure. Wrecked tanks sit half buried in the snow, their engines open like rib cages. Some crews have tried to camouflage them with branches, pretending the vehicles are just resting until more fuel arrives. Others have simply been torched. The smell of burned rubber and diesel still lingers. A corporal walking beside you mutters, "If they had one more day of gas, we'd be toast." You nod. He's not wrong. The offensive that looked unstoppable 2 weeks ago is now a graveyard of steel. Mainstream historical fact. The German army entered the Battle of the Bulge with barely enough fuel for the first phase of their plan. They counted on seizing Allied stocks along the way to keep going. Instead, the rapid Allied demolition of supply depots and the relentless airstrikes turned the offensive into a logistical nightmare. By late December, most German armored divisions had less than 30% of their required fuel. You see it firsthand at a blown bridge near Houffalize. German trucks, stalled and abandoned, clog the road for miles. Soldiers strip them for parts or use them as cover from strafing aircraft. One vehicle has a hand-painted sign on its hood, Kein Benzin. You don't need to speak German to understand it. A quirky tidbit: some American soldiers later joked that the biggest hero of the Ardennes was a 5-gallon gas can. One unit even painted "Fuel kills Führers" on their supply trucks as they rumbled past the burned-out German columns. At a crossroads, you stop to help engineers clear wreckage. The snow is gray with ash. You pick up a twisted road sign lying half-buried under a tire rim. It points in 3 directions, all of them meaningless now. One arrow reads, "Bastogne, 12 kilometers." You shake your head. You've already lived that nightmare. As the day goes on, you pass the remains of a German convoy ambushed by fighter bombers. The snow around it is scorched black, the bodies frozen mid-motion. One soldier still grips a jerry can in his gloved hand, as if unwilling to let go, even after death. You look away, quickly. The air war has made the ground war obscene. That evening, the sky turns violet with smoke from a fuel dump hit earlier by Allied planes. Flames lick the clouds. The men around you warm their hands at the eerie glow and joke about roasting marshmallows. "S'mores a la Hitler," someone quips. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because you're alive enough to. Historians still argue whether Hitler truly believed the fuel problem could be solved by capturing Allied reserves, or whether he ignored logistics entirely in his obsession with striking a decisive blow. Some of his generals, Model, Rundstedt, Manteuffel, had warned him that the plan's fuel calculations were fantasy. He brushed them aside, insisting, "The enemy's fuel is our fuel." It sounded clever until the trucks stopped moving. You climb a ridge overlooking the Meuse Valley. The river, the grand objective of this whole offensive, glimmers faintly in the distance, untouched, unthreatened. The Germans never got close enough to see it. Not really. From here, the landscape looks peaceful, white, quiet, eternal. Only the wrecks marring the snow betray what happened here. By now, the German columns are splintering into smaller groups, many trying to fight their way back east through the same forests they entered so confidently. They drag sleds loaded with what little fuel remains, marching beside their tanks because there's no point riding them. Some burn villages just to keep warm. The roads they once stormed along are now lined with their own dead machines. You meet a captured German officer being escorted west by MPs. He's young, too young, with frostbite on his cheeks. In perfect English, he says, "It was a fine plan, until the petrol vanished." You nod. Every plan's fine until the snow starts falling. He gives a weary smile. Then we all become pedestrians. The deeper you move into the salient, the stranger it feels. The forest is quiet now, except for distant artillery and the crack of trees splitting under frost. The German attack has frozen in place, literally. You step past half-tracks whose wheels have sunk into the icy mud. Men's footprints frozen solid in retreat. It's like walking through a museum of hubris. Mainstream historical fact. By early January, German fuel shortages were so severe that some divisions abandoned tanks wholesale and reorganized as infantry. Others siphoned fuel from wounded vehicles just to move artillery pieces a few miles. The failure to secure the Meuse crossings meant the offensive had no endgame. It was bleeding itself dry 1 kilometer at a time. Quirky tidbit. Allied troops nicknamed abandoned German tanks Eisenbergs, Iron Mountains, and used them as convenient landmarks when giving directions. "Turn left at the Eisenberg" became a common phrase on the radio. You bivouac near a bombed-out rail station. The ground is pocked with craters, the rails twisted into surreal shapes. Someone has hung a sign on a telegraph pole. "Free fuel, bring your own tank." The laughter that follows is thin, but real. At dusk, you spot a line of German prisoners marching past, some limping, others staring blankly ahead. They look more relieved than defeated. You hand one a cigarette. He takes it silently, cups it against the wind, and mutters, "Diesel, alles Diesel." You realize he's still thinking about fuel, still obsessed with what killed his army. Historians still debate whether the Battle of the Bulge's end was truly inevitable once the fuel ran out, or if earlier Allied missteps might have prolonged the crisis. Some even argue that if a few key depots hadn't been destroyed, the Germans might have reached the Meuse after all. You shake your head at that thought. Standing in this frozen wasteland, you can't imagine how anyone could call this almost success. As night falls, the cold deepens again. You sit by a small fire with two comrades, passing around a tin of beans. One says, "Think they'll try again?" You answer, "Not without gas they won't." He chuckles. "Guess Hitler should have invaded Shell instead of Poland." The laughter fades into the sound of crackling wood. Above you, the stars return, brighter now, sharper. You trace your breath in the air, thinking of how fragile all this really is. Men, machines, ambitions, all undone by weather and fuel. You remember that phrase from the German officer, "Then we all become pedestrians." You whisper it to yourself, like a line from a sad poem. The forest is still. Somewhere to the east, the engines finally stop. What began with a roar has ended in silence. The rumor comes drifting through the snow like smoke. Patton's coming. At first, it sounds like wishful thinking, the sort of fantasy soldiers tell each other to warm their hands and hearts. But then you start to hear the deeper rumble. Real engines, real armor, moving north through the slush and sleet. By Christmas, General George S. Patton's Third Army has turned 90 degrees and is punching straight toward Bastogne. You can almost feel the disbelief ripple through the ranks. Only a week ago, everyone said it was impossible. Moving an entire army that far, that fast across winter roads? Not in Europe, not in December, not through a landscape built for nightmares. But Patton doesn't really do impossible. You march south to meet the column, and the first thing you see are the tankers. Their Shermans are plastered with mud and ice, their crews unshaven, their faces windburned and wired from caffeine. One leans out of the turret, grinning under a scarf. "Heard you boys ordered a Christmas miracle," he says. "We deliver." They advance day and night, headlights blacked out, engines growling like an approaching storm. At crossroads, MPs wave them through, shouting directions over the roar. The air smells of gasoline, sweat, and optimism, an intoxicating mix after weeks of smoke and despair. Mainstream historical fact: Patton's maneuver from the Saar to Bastogne remains one of the most impressive feats of operational agility in modern warfare. In less than 48 hours, he redirected 3 corps, over 100,000 men and 400 tanks, northward to relieve the 101st Airborne. The movement was so rapid that German intelligence dismissed early reports as impossible. You hitch a ride on a half-track headed north. The driver's radio hums with static and snatches of Glenn Miller tunes. Someone's pinned a Christmas card to the dash, Santa riding a tank instead of a sleigh. The humor keeps you warm. The roads are a mess of churned snow, wrecked vehicles, and refugees. Convoys snake through narrow villages where every window is shattered, every tree limbed by shellfire. Civilians peer out from cellars and wave weakly. Patton's men toss them chocolate and cigarettes, half apology, half benediction. When night falls, the temperature plummets. The steel hull of the half-track radiates cold through your boots. Frost gathers on the inside of your helmet. Yet morale hums higher than it has in weeks. Somewhere up front, you hear Patton's name whispered like a spell. Quirky tidbit. Before launching the relief, Patton famously asked his chaplain to compose a weather prayer. The next day, the skies cleared enough for air support to resume. The prayer was printed and distributed to every man in Third Army, 200,000 copies. Soldiers started calling it the Holy Order for Good Flying Weather. As you near the front, the rumble of artillery swells. Bastogne is still under siege, though its defenders refuse to yield. Patton's lead elements, the 4th Armored Division, take the spearhead, grinding through pockets of resistance, village by village. You ride into the outskirts of Ardennes on the morning of December 26th. The horizon flashes with gunfire. A tank commander pops his head out and yells over the din, "We're 2 miles from Bastogne." His voice cracks with pride and exhaustion. Historians still argue whether Patton's relief was tactically essential or mostly symbolic. The 101st was holding, after all. But to the men on the ground, those tanks are salvation incarnate. The final push begins at dawn. The 4th Armored Tanks crest a snowy ridge, their barrels steaming. Infantry fan out beside them, moving through ditches and hedgerows. The Germans resist fiercely. 88mm shells crack through the air. You dive for cover behind a wrecked half-track, the shockwave lifting snow off the ground like surf. A lieutenant beside you shouts into his radio, "We're through!" Repeat, "We're breaking through!" The reply is drowned out by the roar of an engine, a Sherman lurching forward, treads grinding, smoke trailing from its exhaust. The driver leans on the horn as if announcing deliverance itself. Mainstream historical fact. At 4:50 p.m. on December 26, 1944, a patrol from the 37th Tank Battalion made contact with the 101st Airborne outside Bastogne. The first words over the radio were simple: "We're here." The siege was officially broken. You reach the town hours later. The paratroopers greet the tankers with grins and profanity and half-frozen handshakes. Someone uncorks a bottle of cognac scavenged from a ruined store. The air smells of cordite, fuel, and victory. You wander through Bastogne's square, now a frozen ruin stitched with tank tracks. The men of the 101st look like ghosts, faces hollow, eyes ringed with frostbite. But they're standing, still armed, still cracking jokes. One paratrooper waves at a Sherman and shouts, "What kept you, Santa?" The tanker calls back, "Traffic on the chimney." You laugh until you cough. The sound of laughter here feels like rebellion. That night, Patton's headquarters sends a brief message to Eisenhower. "Xmas present delivered to Bastogne." Ike's reply is shorter. "Good work. Merry Christmas." Historians still debate whether Patton's drive north was pure genius or just perfect timing, but no one doubts its effect. The German offensive, already starved and stalling, now meets resistance from all sides. The bulge in the Allied lines has stopped expanding. Soon, it will begin to shrink. Quirky tidbit. Patton celebrated the success by attending a Christmas service in a bombed-out chapel. He knelt in the front pew, revolver still on his hip, and thanked God for good weather and good men. Witnesses later swore he nodded once toward the altar and said, "That'll do, Lord. That'll do." Outside, the snow falls again. Gentler this time, almost kind. You stand at the edge of the town, watching the flurries drift over tanks and helmets and broken brick. The battle isn't over, not by a long shot, but the tide is turned and everyone can feel it. You find a moment of silence amid the chaos. A field kitchen has fired up somewhere, and the faint smell of coffee drifts through the air. A paratrooper presses a tin cup into your hand. "Here," he says, "best stuff in Europe." You sip it. Lukewarm, bitter, perfect. Nearby, a medic tends to a wounded German prisoner. The man is young, barely 20. He shivers under a blanket, staring at the Americans bustling around him. You watch the medic tuck the blanket higher, adjusting the bandage. No speeches, no hatred, just one human gesture in a place that's seen too few. For the first time in weeks, you believe this might end. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. The front is no longer collapsing. It's breathing again. Orders are being given with confidence, not panic. Radios hum instead of scream. As night falls, the forest outside Bastogne glows faintly with the fires of abandoned vehicles. The stars return, scattered and bright, and the air smells of diesel and pine. You sit on the step of a ruined house, unwrap a chocolate bar from a ration pack, and break it in half for the soldier beside you. He grins. "Here's to Patton." You nod, and to anyone crazy enough to follow him. He raises his half like a toast, and for one brief, surreal moment, the war feels far away. Tomorrow, the fighting will roll east again, toward the Meuse, toward the border, toward Germany itself. But tonight, under this fragile snowfall and this flickering light, the world feels steady for the first time all winter. You lean back against the wall, close your eyes, and let exhaustion wash over you. Somewhere in the distance, you hear tanks clanking into position, engines idling low. like the heartbeat of a giant that refuses to sleep. You smile faintly. The Bastogne ring is broken, and with it, the myth of German invincibility in the West. The next morning dawns so bright it hurts your eyes. For the first time in weeks, sunlight spreads across the snow without the veil of smoke or fog. The air is razor sharp, the kind that makes your lungs sting when you breathe too deep. You're still at Bastogne, but the mood has changed. The men walk differently now, slower but taller. The siege is over, and the sky belongs to you again. You hear it before you see it. The low hum of engines overhead, steady and confident. You step out from the half-collapsed barn you slept in and look up. The horizon is filled with aircraft. Sleek, silver C-47 transports trailing long threads of parachutes that blossom like dandelions. They fall gracefully, each carrying crates of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The men cheer so loud it drowns out the engines. Some even wave helmets in the air. After weeks of starvation rations, even the idea of warm soup feels like a dream. Mainstream historical fact. Beginning December 23rd, Allied transport planes dropped more than 300 tons of supplies into Bastogne. Pilots flew low, under constant fire to hit their marks. Without those deliveries, the 101st Airborne might not have lasted another 48 hours. You watch the bundles drift down, thudding into snowdrifts with muffled whumps. A sergeant wades out to retrieve one and waves a tin can aloft. "Beans, boys!" The taste of civilization. Someone else yells back, "Don't eat it too fast, you'll shock your stomach." The laughter that follows sounds strange, like a sound that's been hibernating. By noon, the airfield south of the lines buzzes with fighter bombers, P-47s and P-51s, arming up for their daily raids. The pilots stroll around their planes, stamping their feet to stay warm. A crew chief wipes frost off a cowling and mutters, "About time we got back in the game." You watch the fighters roar off in pairs, their exhaust leaving faint halos in the cold. Minutes later, dull booms roll in from the horizon. The pilots are hunting again. German columns, artillery batteries, fuel trucks, anything still moving eastward. The whole forest vibrates with the distant percussion of a dying offensive. Quirky tidbit: one C-47 crew slipped a few Christmas presents into their drop crates, bottles of bourbon, cartons of cigarettes, and a single phonograph record of White Christmas. When paratroopers found it spinning in the wreckage of a crate, they played it on repeat until the needle wore out. You walk through the square, now crowded with medics unloading new supplies. The wounded who could walk help those who can't. A doctor hands you a cup of hot coffee so strong it could dissolve boots. You sip it anyway, savoring the burn. Everywhere you look, signs of life reappear. Trucks clatter through the streets. Radio men fix antennas. A cook has rigged a stove from a shell casing. The smoke smells like bacon grease and victory. And above it all, the sky stays clear. A rare miracle in an Ardennes winter. Historians still argue whether the break in weather was luck or divine intervention. Patton swore it was the result of his chaplain's prayer. Meteorologists, of course, point to shifting pressure systems. Either way, the result is the same. The clouds part, the planes return, and the Germans' last hope evaporates into blue. By afternoon, Allied air patrols are so constant that men stop looking up. Instead, you notice something new. Silence on the ground. No distant barrages, no tank engines. Only the occasional crack of rifle fire where German stragglers test the line and die for nothing. The offensive that began as a roar is dwindling to static. You volunteer to help the engineers open one of the supply drops. Inside are rations, morphine, a crate of socks, and, miraculously, a stack of newspapers from London. The headlines are already days old, but the print still smells fresh. German drive halted at Bastogne. Someone reads it aloud and shakes his head. Guess they forgot to mention we almost froze doing it. You keep one of the papers, folding it carefully. Maybe, you think, someday, you'll want proof this actually happened. At dusk, the fighter bombers return. their wings flashing orange in the sunset. The pilots climb down stiff-legged, faces streaked with sweat and frost. One of them slaps your shoulder on the way to the mess line. "You guys held the door," he says. "We just kicked it shut." Mainstream historical fact. During the last week of December, Allied aircraft flew over 10,000 sorties in support of ground forces. The combination of air supremacy and renewed mobility turned the Battle of the Bulge from a crisis into a counteroffensive. You walk beyond the town that night, following a line of tanks poised along the ridge. Their crews smoke in silence, silhouettes against the faint orange glow of distant fires. The snow crunches underfoot like breaking glass. Somewhere to the east, the Germans are still fighting, but it feels mechanical now, drained of will. Quirky tidbit. Allied pilots began using captured German vehicles as makeshift target practice after dark, lighting them with flares and betting who could hit the radiator first. The ground crews called it the Midnight Carnival. You stop near a tank crew brewing coffee over a small fire. One of them, a sergeant from Texas, gestures toward the sky. "You know," he says, "when we were pinned back there in the fog, I promised God I'd never complain about sunlight again. Now I can't blink without tearing up." Another replies, "Don't worry, give it a week. He'll send the rain back." The laughter is quiet but real. And for the first time in a long while, it doesn't sound forced. Historians still argue whether the restoration of Allied air power was the single turning point of the battle, or simply the hammer blow that finished a broken enemy. Some credit Bastogne, others point to Elsenborn Ridge. But standing here, feeling the ground vibrate as waves of aircraft roar overhead, it's hard not to think the sky itself made the decision. You turn back toward the town, walking through the soft light of flares drifting like snow lanterns. In the distance, Bastogne glows, a patchwork of fires and lamplight and motion. The siege is gone, replaced by a kind of restless rebirth. Trucks load, engines idle, orders crackle on radios. The war machine is alive again, but this time it's moving forward. You pass a chaplain kneeling beside a row of graves, reading softly over the wind. He pauses, looks up, and nods. "They'll get to rest now," he says quietly. You want to answer, but the words stick. You just nod back and move on. Later, in your makeshift tent, you unwrap a can of rations and stare at the stars through a tear in the canvas. They seem impossibly bright, cold and pure. You wonder if the men who died here ever got to look up like this. You wonder if peace feels like this silence. A radio hums somewhere nearby, faint music leaking through the static. "Don't Fence Me In" of all songs. You smile because it's absurd and perfect. Tomorrow, Patton will start pushing east. Tomorrow, the planes will hunt deeper across the frontier. But tonight, the snow falls gently again, clean and undisturbed, as if trying to forgive the earth for what it's seen. You lie back, eyes heavy, the hum of engines fading into dreams. The world feels lighter, not because it's at peace yet, but because, for the first time since this began, victory feels inevitable. And somewhere above you, the parachutes still drift down, slow and silent, like blessings on the wind. You wake to the sound of a jeep skidding to a stop on the icy road outside your tent. A corporal jumps out, waving a dispatch. "They're in contact," he shouts. You roll from your blanket, boots stiff, joints aching, and step into the glare of morning. The frost glitters like shattered glass across the field. The words hang in the air like a drumbeat. The counterattack has begun. By late December, Patton's men are already driving north from the south. The British are pressing down from the north, and the Germans, who once surged west with swagger and ambition, are now the ones clinging to ground they no longer believe in. The bulge that once jutted proudly into the Allied line is shrinking, every mile bought back with grit and artillery. The Americans are moving fast now. You march with a column of tanks through the woods east of Bastogne, the ground shaking under each tread. The snow is thinner here, trampled into gray slush by thousands of boots. The trees are splintered, blackened, stripped bare by shells. You pass the burned-out hulks of German panzers, each one a reminder of the cold, hungry empire collapsing under its own weight. Up ahead, the radio crackles with snippets of orders. One voice breaks through the static. Hold St. Hubert. Contact at Flamierge. Push toward Houffalize. The place names blur together, but you recognize the rhythm. This is no longer defense, it's pursuit. Mainstream historical fact. On December 26th, after relieving Bastogne, Patton's Third Army pivoted east to begin pushing the Germans back. Simultaneously, the First Army under Hodges attacked southward from Elsenborn, and Montgomery's British forces advanced from the north. The jaws of a massive pincer began to close around the remaining German forces. You see it firsthand that afternoon, when your unit encounters the remnants of a German column retreating through a narrow pass. A tank destroyer opens fire, the explosion echoing like thunder through the hills. German soldiers scatter, throwing down their weapons. The fight is over in minutes. They look hollow, their faces gray with exhaustion and frostbite. One of them stumbles forward, hands raised, and murmurs in accented English, "No more fuel, no more food, no more anything." A private beside you snorts, "Guess they ran out of everything but bad luck." You don't laugh. The man's shaking too hard to be funny. The surrendering soldiers are herded west toward makeshift camps, barns, fields, anything with walls. You help distribute blankets. Some of the prisoners can't even feel the warmth. Their eyes are unfocused, lips cracked. You're struck by how young they look, boys barely old enough to shave. For a moment, it's impossible not to see yourself in them. Quirky tidbit. One group of American guards reported that the German prisoners begged not for food, but for soap. They wanted to wash the grime of the forest from their skin. They wanted to smell like people again, one GI recalled later. That's when you realized they were done fighting. That night, you bivouac near the town of Cibray. The wind howls across the frozen hills, carrying the faint glow of artillery in the distance. Someone's rigged up a radio, and the news filters in between bursts of static. The German advance has been halted. Allied counterattacks are succeeding on all fronts. You pass the receiver around like a relic, each man pressing it to his ear, eyes closing as if listening to proof that the world still makes sense. Historians still argue whether the Allied counteroffensive succeeded because of sheer numbers, or because the Germans had simply run out of time. Some say it was inevitable the moment their timetable broke. Others credit the relentless coordination between American and British commanders. Whatever the reason, you feel the shift in your bones. The hunted have become the hunters. At dawn, you move again. The snow crunches underfoot, the sun glinting off the ice like polished steel. You march past miles of wreckage, fields littered with helmets, rifles, ration tins. It's hard to tell who won by looking at the ground. Everyone lost something here. You crest a ridge overlooking a valley blanketed in mist. Down below, armored columns move like shadows, engines droning in chorus. You can make out the shape of Bastogne behind you, now distant, fading into history. Ahead lies the same path the Germans took in mid-December, only this time the direction is reversed. As you descend, a group of civilians emerges from a cluster of cellars. Belgian farmers, faces hollow but smiling, wave timidly as the column passes. One old woman presses a small loaf of bread into your hands and says something you can't quite hear. You nod anyway. She just wanted to see an army moving east again. Mainstream historical fact. By early January 1945, the Allied lines had stabilized. The German salient, once 50 miles deep, was compressed daily under relentless counterattacks. By January 16th, Patton's forces from the south linked up with Hodges' troops from the north near Houffalize, effectively sealing the Bulge. You'll never forget that march into Houffalize. The town is a carcass, walls standing without roofs, chimneys without houses. The smell of smoke lingers, mixed with thawing mud and something metallic. You pick your way through rubble, stepping over frozen ruts filled with twisted wire. An MP directs traffic with a whistle, his breath pluming like steam. He grins when he sees you. "Welcome back," he says. "We've been saving you a seat." Quirky tidbit. When Allied units met at Houffalize, the first item traded between them wasn't rations or ammunition, but coffee. One division had been running on tea, the other on ersatz chicory brew. They brewed a pot together in a dented helmet and called it Victory Blend. As night falls, the cold returns with claws. You huddle beside a Sherman tank still idling for warmth. The crew has chalked words on its armor. Next stop, Berlin. You stare at the slogan for a while, wondering if they really mean it, or if it's just the kind of bravado soldiers need to stay sane. Historians still debate whether the Battle of the Bulge shortened or lengthened the war. Some claim it drained the last German reserves and hastened the collapse of the Reich. Others argue it delayed the inevitable Allied push into Germany by several critical weeks. You don't care much either way. For you, it's simpler. This was where winter tried to swallow you, and you refused to let it. You share your last cigarette with a paratrooper who fought through the siege. His face is so gaunt it could be carved from stone. He exhales smoke into the cold and says, "You know, when they first hit us, I thought we were all ghosts waiting for the paperwork." You grin. "And now?" He shrugs. "Now I guess we're ghosts that won." The wind rises again, carrying snowflakes that glint like sparks in the moonlight. Somewhere east, artillery murmurs, steady and distant. A lullaby for a battlefield that's finally beginning to quiet. You lean against the tank, eyes heavy, and let the sound fade into the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat. For the first time since December 16th, you sleep without fear of waking to gunfire. The Battle of the Bulge is ending, not with fanfare or trumpets, but with exhaustion and silence. The Ardennes, blanketed once more in snow, begins to heal, covering its scars under white forgiveness. And you, one soldier among thousands, breathe in the frozen air and think, "We came here as defenders, but we're leaving as witnesses." The new year creeps in quietly, without fireworks, without champagne, just the low rumble of artillery and the crunch of boots on snow. You don't even know it's January 1st until someone mutters it at breakfast, stirring powdered eggs with a bayonet. "Hell of a way to start a year," he says, "but at least we're still in it." By now, the bulge on the map, the great wound in the Allied line, is almost gone. The armies have converged from north and south, pressing inward like closing jaws. You can feel the change everywhere, in the way officers speak with certainty again, in the way the supply trucks roll forward instead of back. For the first time since the snow started falling, the front feels like a road leading somewhere instead of a dead end. You spend the morning walking through what's left of the Ardennes battlefield. The forest is eerily still, the air heavy with the ghosts of December. Trees stand stripped of bark where bullets carved their initials. Charred trucks lean against embankments like exhausted beasts. You find the remains of a campfire, coffee grounds frozen in a tin cup, a glove lying half-buried nearby. No one ever comes back for things like that. Down the road, you meet an engineer unit clearing mines. Their sergeant grins through a layer of grime. "This whole place is booby-trapped with bad memories," he says. You step wrong, and history blows up in your face. You chuckle, but he's not wrong. The counterattack rolls east with the sound of endless treads. Tanks groan through thawing mud, infantry ride on their hulls, rifles slung casually now, like men who know the worst has passed. Overhead, fighter bombers weave lazy circles, unchallenged. The sky, once an enemy, has become a friend again. Mainstream historical fact. By early January 1945, the Allied forces had retaken nearly all the territory lost in the German offensive. The bulge in the front line was flattened through coordinated attacks by the US 1st and 3rd Armies. The German retreat was chaotic, marked by fuel shortages, destroyed bridges, and crumbling morale. You pass through towns whose names have already become shorthand for survival. St. Vith, Houffalize, Bastogne. Each one smells of smoke and thawing bodies, each one filled with civilians emerging from cellars like seeds sprouting after frost. They look at you with something between gratitude and disbelief. A woman presses a crust of bread into your hand. Pour la liberté, she says softly. For freedom. You nod, unsure how to answer that kind of faith. Quirky tidbit. After the battle, local farmers discovered that the explosions had scattered millions of pine cones across the forest floor. The next spring, the Ardennes sprouted an unusually dense growth of young pines. So many that some villagers joked the forest itself was trying to cover its shame. By the 8th of January, the weather begins to turn again. Snow melts during the day and refreezes at night, turning roads into glass. Trucks skid sideways, jeeps spin in lazy circles. Men curse and laugh at once. You help push a supply vehicle out of a ditch, slipping and landing on your back. The sergeant pulls you up with a grin. Careful, soldier, you'll win the war and die of clumsiness. Everywhere you look, the signs of German collapse multiply. Columns of prisoners march west, escorted by half-frozen MPs. They trudge in silence, heads down, boots wrapped in rags. You overhear one young German whisper to another, "It's finished." His companion doesn't reply. What could he say? Historians still argue whether Hitler ever understood how doomed his final offensive was once the fuel ran dry and the weather turned. Some accounts say he refused to believe reports of retreat, insisting that the Meuse was still within reach. Others claim he knew by New Year's Day that the dream had died, but refused to admit it out loud. Either way, his silence became an order. Fight to the last drop of gasoline, the last shell, the last illusion. You reach a vantage point on a high ridge overlooking the Ourthe River. Below, engineers have thrown up a temporary bridge of timber and steel. Convoys cross in single file, an endless procession of tanks, trucks, ambulances, all coated in grime and victory. You stand there for a while, hands jammed into your coat pockets, watching the tide of war flow east again. It's a strange feeling. You've spent so long defending, surviving, reacting. Now the momentum is yours, but it feels less like triumph and more like release. The offensive that was meant to break the Allies has instead broken the last illusions of German power in the West. A small group of Belgian children appear on the ridge beside you. They stare wide-eyed at the endless traffic. The men in olive drab, the thunder of engines. One of them tugs your sleeve and points toward the east. "L'Allemagne?" he asks. You nod. He thinks for a moment, then says softly, "Bon voyage." You smile. "Thanks, kid. We'll bring you peace as a souvenir." By mid-January, the Allied lines close completely around the remnants of the German armies still trapped in the Ardennes pocket. Artillery pounds the forests where they once assembled in secret. The same trees that shielded their surprise attack now become cages. Mainstream historical fact. The Battle of the Bulge officially ended on January 25, 1945. It was the largest battle fought by the U.S. Army in World War II, involving more than 1 million men on both sides. The Allies suffered nearly 90,000 casualties. German losses were even higher, over 100,000 killed, wounded, or captured. The offensive that Hitler called his Great Gamble left his armies crippled and the Western Front broken beyond repair. You see the end not as a grand finale, but as a gradual fading. The gunfire grows more distant each day. The sky is pale blue again, the snow turning to slush under the rising sun. One morning, you wake and realize you can hear birds singing in the woods, the first you've heard since November. You laugh out loud, startling your bunkmates. Quirky tidbit. After the battle, some GIs adopted local foxes as mascots, claiming the animals had fought the Germans with them by howling whenever troops approached. One was even brought back to the States and paraded at a victory rally under the name Bastogne Bill. You find yourself thinking less about tactics and more about moments. How the forest smelled before the first barrage. How the silence after victory felt heavier than noise. The war isn't over yet, but the shadow that hung over Europe for so long feels thinner somehow. as if sunlight might finally burn it away. That night, a snowstorm rolls in one last time, sweeping over the ruined landscape like a curtain call. You stand outside your tent, face turned upward, eyes closed. The flakes sting your skin, but you let them fall. Behind you, someone hums a half-forgotten Christmas tune. The notes drift between the trees and vanish. Historians still argue over what the Battle of the Bulge meant, whether it proved Allied resilience, German desperation, or simply the absurd endurance of ordinary men. But out here, under the snow and the stars, you realize it doesn't need to mean anything more than this. You were cold, you were scared, and you kept going anyway. The wind picks up, tugging at your coat. In the distance, the last echoes of gunfire fade into nothing. The forest exhales. You whisper to no one in particular, "We made it through the winter." When the guns finally stop, you don't trust it at first. The silence feels wrong, too large, too absolute. You wait for the next shell, the next burst of machine gun fire, the next angry sound of war to remind you that you're still in it. But the forest only breathes. The snow drifts quietly through the gaps in the trees, soft and lazy, like the world has forgotten what violence sounds like. You walk east with your company, following roads that have turned from battlefields back into landscapes. The snow is pocked with the ghosts of tire tracks, the ditches full of melted helmets and abandoned rifles. Every few miles you pass a burnt-out tank, still steaming faintly, its gun pointed at nothing. Once, such things terrified you. Now, they just look tired. At a crossroads near the town of Trois Ponts, an MP waves you to halt. He's got a clipboard in one hand and a cigarette in the other, looking far too calm for a man standing in the wreckage of Europe. "Congratulations, fellas," he says. "The Bulge is gone." You blink. Just like that. 3 words to summarize 6 weeks of chaos. Mainstream historical fact. On January 25th, 1945, the Allies officially declared the Ardennes campaign concluded. What had begun as Hitler's desperate bid to split the Allied armies ended with the destruction of nearly a quarter of Germany's remaining forces on the Western Front. The offensive cost the Germans irreplaceable fuel, men, and armor, ensuring that when the Allies crossed the Rhine 2 months later, there would be nothing left strong enough to stop them. The men around you cheer softly, but it's not the wild celebration of victory parades or newsreels. It's quieter, relief more than triumph. One soldier mutters, "Guess we survived the last German miracle." Another replies, "Then let's pray they don't try another." You help set up camp on a gentle slope overlooking the Meuse Valley. The sun, low and pale, glints off the river miles away. It's strange to see the objective of the entire offensive sitting there, peaceful, almost mocking in its calm. All that suffering, all those deaths, for a line on a map they never even reached. That night, your unit gathers around a fire built from the splinters of an old wagon. Someone passes around a bottle of schnapps looted from an abandoned farmhouse. The label's in Gothic script, but the warmth it brings is universal. You take a long pull and feel the heat crawl down your throat, chasing the cold from your bones. A sergeant starts telling stories, some true, most exaggerated. He mimics the German loudspeakers that blared, "Surrender, Americans," during the siege. He pretends to answer back, "Come and get us." Everyone laughs, maybe too loudly. You realize that laughter is the only sound left that doesn't echo like gunfire. Quirky tidbit. In the aftermath of the battle, US soldiers began trading captured German watches as if they were baseball cards. One private claimed to have 8 of them strapped up his arm to keep track of how many ways I could have died. As the fire burns low, you look at the faces around you, grimed, scarred, but alive. You think about all the others who aren't sitting here tonight. You think about the boy from Pennsylvania who used to hum, "I'll be home for Christmas." The medic who rolled cigarettes from hymn book pages. The nameless men buried under snowdrifts that the spring melt will reveal. Historians still argue over what the Battle of the Bulge really changed. Some say it delayed victory in Europe by a few weeks. Others claim it ended the war months sooner by breaking Germany's last hope. But for you, it isn't about the calendar. It's about the people who stood in the cold and refused to fall. The next morning, you help collect abandoned gear. Helmets, rifles, boots frozen into the mud. The army's already talking about redeploying east toward the Rhine. The war machine grinds forward again, patient, inevitable. You load equipment into the back of a truck and glance once more at the snow-covered forest. It's quiet now, but you know it will remember. Mainstream historical fact. The Battle of the Bulge became the bloodiest engagement fought by the U.S. Army during the Second World War. More than 600,000 Americans took part. Over 19,000 were killed and tens of thousands more wounded or captured. Yet despite the staggering cost, it marked the point where German resistance in the West collapsed for good. That night, a chaplain holds a small service beside the road. No pulpit, no hymn book, just a battered Bible and the glow of a lantern. The men gather around, helmets off. The chaplain's voice is hoarse as he reads, "Blessed are the peacemakers." No one says amen, but the silence afterward feels like one. You lie awake for a long time after, watching the snow fall on your blanket. The flakes melt as they land, turning into tiny, perfect circles of warmth. You wonder what it will be like to go home, to sit in a real chair, to hear silence that doesn't come after an explosion. You imagine explaining this to someone who's never seen a frozen battlefield. You realize you can't. Some things can't be told. They have to be remembered. Historians still debate the psychology of the Ardennes, whether the fog, the fear, and the surprise revealed the best or worst of men. You think maybe it did both. You saw cruelty and kindness share a foxhole, despair and humor marching side by side. You saw men pray and curse in the same breath. You saw them live. The war moves on without ceremony. Orders come down. The line will advance toward the Siegfried defenses. Trucks rev, rifles are cleaned, maps are redrawn. The forest where you nearly froze to death becomes yesterday's news. Before leaving, you walk out to the edge of the trees one last time. The snow crunches under your boots, the wind sharp against your cheeks. You find a rusted helmet half buried near a tree stump. You don't know whose it was. You set it upright, brush the snow away, and whisper, "Rest easy, buddy." Then you turn back toward the east, toward Germany, toward whatever comes next. The sound of engines rises behind you, steady and unstoppable. The war isn't done, but the worst of winter is. You start walking. The snow creaks, the sun glints faintly through the clouds, and the world feels, just for a moment, almost clean again. The forest sleeps now. The fires are gone, the smoke dispersed, the air still. Snow covers the scars like a white bandage, softening the outlines of tanks and trenches. Somewhere beneath that quiet blanket, the earth keeps the memory of courage, fear, frostbite, and laughter in the dark. You breathe slowly, letting the chill fill your lungs. The war that raged here feels impossibly far away, though it's still marching east, echoing down roads you can't see. But tonight, for the first time, you don't feel chased by it. You've walked through the storm and out the other side. You think of the men you met, the paratrooper who joked about being surrounded, the tanker who painted "Next Stop Berlin" on his armor, the medic who treated enemy and ally alike. They're scattered now, some alive, some names carved in ice. Yet somehow they all live in this stillness. The stars above are faint but steady. A breeze stirs the pines, whispering through the branches like the low murmur of sleeping voices. You close your eyes and listen. Maybe peace isn't something grand or final. Maybe it's this. You pull your blanket tighter. Let the cold brush your face and feel yourself grow lighter with each breath. The Ardennes fades behind your eyelids. Its roads, its ghosts, its terrible beauty, all dissolving into quiet. Tomorrow will come, as it always does. But for now, The world is calm. Good night, soldier. Sleep well.